Welcome in, everyone. This is Stuck in the Catch Fence, where we're going to break down, was it right for NASCAR to give the waiver? Does it do NASCAR any justice? These guys have their opinion. I have mine. I'm sure you have yours. Let's talk about it. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. If you were able to, I brought my opinion on Rick Hendrick, a.k.a. NASCAR's Godfather, yesterday. And if you're able to watch that, number one, thank you. But number two, maybe you have a little bit of a different opinion of what actually is going on when it comes to the waiver, when it comes to Kyle Larson and his surrounding situation, to where NASCAR kind of set it on its hands for a little bit, let this manifest, let us all get faux rage just to do what we all thought they were going to do in the first place. So I'm going to talk to you guys. I'll let you guys go first. I want your initial thoughts of Kyle Larson getting the waiver. Was it deserved? Is it good for the sport? Travis, you go ahead and back clean or lead off. Back clean.
I think NASCAR put himself in a tough spot. I think if someone said that there's been 34 instances of waivers, 32 of the, or is it 30 of the 34 has been granted or whatever. Yeah, I think it was something that we talked about. I thought I was about over here in the waiver. I was over here, and I was like, is he gonna get this? Is he gonna not? We all knew the outcome. Like, obviously, if you want your ratings to be important and you want some of this other stuff, NASCAR was going to give the waiver. It's amount of like I said in our text, it almost felt like WWE at one point. Like, oh, here's a storyline. Like, we're gonna keep talking about this. Oh, is he gonna get it? Is he not? Obviously in the end, he was gonna get it, but it was something just to kind of chat about for a little bit.
Joe, what are your initial thoughts? Do you think Kyle Larson deserved it? Is it the right call? What do you think?
Do I think Kyle Larson deserved the waiver?
That's one of the question. That's one of
your first question. I'm gonna answer this like a politician.
Oh boy.
Or an attorney.
Everything this guy says is bullshit.
Yeah. Do I think he deserved a waiver? No, I don't.
Okay.
I do not think he deserved a waiver. But I don't think Chase Elliott deserved a waiver last year for either incident. I don't think Alex Bowman did. I don't think anybody in the sport of NASCAR deserves a waiver unless the reason why they missed the race is NASCAR related, like Kyle Busch, who's running in a Busch. Oh my God, I just called it a Busch race.
To be fair, he's dominated so much it should be called Busch racing.
Wow, I'm getting old.
He can't run an entire test, so let's just call it a Busch race.
Yeah, Xfinity race. Gets hurt in the Xfinity race, breaks both his legs or ankles, and has how many weeks he ended up missing? 10, 12, something like that. It was a bunch.
He came back for the Coke 600. So whatever week this is, roughly would be the same thing.
Yeah, it was a bunch. He deserved a waiver, and just like I told you, I mean, I know we don't have enough time to get into our text thread the other day that was kind of getting a little heated for three friends. Well, Travis Butt, trying to like play the nice guy, like, oh guys, let's get along, because he's of that younger generation. We go hands on, Travis.
That's right.
That's how we do it.
That's right.
But obviously, for personal reasons, I'm glad Kyle Larson got the waiver, and this is exactly what I said. If they don't give him a waiver, I won't watch a race for the rest of the season, and I meant it. And not because I think he deserves a waiver, because I don't. But you can't, just like the court of law, you can't set a precedent. In the court of law, you can't set a legal precedent and then jump outside of that. Now, you can argue all you want that he chose to stay. Sorry. He chose to stay. That's my mom, by the way. He chose to stay and run the Indianapolis 500 knowing that he wasn't going to make it. And I know NASCAR stated that the weather was beyond his control, which caused him to miss the race. And he attempted to make it back, and that was good enough for them to give him a waiver. At the end of the day, if you're going to have a rule and you're going to be the governing body of stock car racing, which NASCAR is, then you got to hold firm to your rules. And that is, you don't give a waiver unless the reason why you're missing the race is NASCAR related, or you have a death in your close personal family, or you have a child being born. Outside of that, there should be no excuses to miss a race. And I agree with you mostly on whatever you're saying or what our discussion was, Ryan, when we went back and forth. However, I think once you set the precedent, you have to align your decisions for the rest of the time with the precedents that you set. And I don't think they had any choice but to give him a waiver.
Yeah, but you use the word precedence, but it's unprecedented. Like you have somebody that willingly did not participate, whether it was mentally choosing not to or physically choosing not to. NASCAR has given waivers for people that physically could not participate outside of Chase Elliott because he got suspended. And maybe they just view that as a racing issue like the other injuries. But when you don't show up to work, like we've discussed this, and it just, I don't know how, when you're trying to set yourself up to be the alpha dog in motorsports, especially North American motorsports, especially when you get infinitely the audience that IndyCar does, you're doing IndyCar a favor, and your best driver, arguably, doesn't show up to work. And I think that was a disservice to the fans at Charlotte. I think it was a disservice to the people that stayed up to watch him to try to run that race. And if it was outside of Hendrick, nobody else would have been granted a waiver. I firmly believe that. If Cody Ware wanted to run the double, which we know Rick Ware Racing does IndyCar, has done IndyCar before, Cody Ware doesn't get a waiver. Like I believe that firmly. So to me, the precedent is set that Rick Hendrick just gets what he wants. And I feel like that's the way it's been throughout NASCAR. When it comes to Jimmy Johnson and Chad Canals doing what they want for their cars, when it comes to just letting Jeff Gordon get into the playoffs because it's Jeff Gordon. Like, I just throw him in the playoffs. Like, it just seems like that the governing body is setting itself up to put itself in these positions all the time. Because, Joe, you said the precedent based upon the law. Well, NASCAR just makes up the law when it wants. If NASCAR is a law, it is Alvin Bragg running as the prosecutor because it just makes up the law whenever it wants. And it has that in its statute that per NASCAR decision. So how can we talk about law and order when you're the one making the laws and then you decide to follow the laws whenever the hell you want?
Well, I can't disagree with you there, except on the point that I told you, and this is exactly what I told you, if you remember. You and I are just not going to agree because I look at this a different way, and that's just how it's going to be. I look at it as NASCAR-related reasons and non-NASCAR-related reasons, whatever that may be. If Chase Elliott last year decided that he wanted to make $1 million in one day on his OnlyFans account, and he could do that, but he'd have to miss a race on Sunday, and he decided to miss the race for that, and NASCAR granted him a waiver, that's a non-NASCAR related reason. And I know that that's a ridiculous, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but he's not doing something that involves NASCAR. When they're out dirt track racing, it doesn't involve NASCAR. When you get hurt, do it on the same hand, every action has a reaction, right? Every action has a consequence, good or bad. We're taught that as little kids. A consequence of running sprint cars at a dirt track on Friday night before a NASCAR race is you might flip it 7 times into the wall and get hurt. That happened, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, if NASCAR was to have practice and happy hour like it would before, these drivers wouldn't be running dirt cars.
So let me ask you this, and maybe bring you around. Here's a question. Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
And I know we get passionate about this, and I want to state this again. I don't think Kyle Larson should have got a waiver if NASCAR had followed their own damn rules. But let me ask you this. What if on Indianapolis 500 Sunday, Kyle Larson lost grip, hit the wall going into turn 1, broke his leg, and wasn't able to compete in the Coke 600? What would your view be then?
He should have got a waiver because he didn't have a waiver.
He didn't have a waiver.
But because there's weather, and he decides to stay there and run, he should not get a waiver.
But that's a conscious decision, Joe. You're taking the conscious decision out of it. He didn't try to get hurt at the Indy 500. That's the point, is he didn't try to get hurt. Now, if he made the conscious decision to run in the Indy 500 and broke his leg, and there was weather that he chose not to choose the start of the Coca-Cola 600, then we're at square one at the beginning of anyway. But if the Indy 500 is started at 12:30, like we all thought, and he broke his leg wrecking in the Indy 500, he gets the waiver. There was no conscious decision in that scenario where he chose not to run NASCAR. The decision is when he had to make a choice. It was A or B. And we were told all along that he was running the Coca-Cola 600. Travis, you said it. We all had word. He was choosing NASCAR first.
Not me. I told you. Did I not tell you that he would choose the 500?
You did.
I think I said that on this show.
You did. But everything that was reported, and we talked about that Kyle Larson does what Kyle Larson does because NASCAR is not nearly as important to him as it is to us. And we saw that he made the decision not to show up for his full-time job. So that is the difference in those scenarios. Travis, do you have anything?
I hate to say this, but I don't think he was the one that pulled the trigger to stay there. And I think part of me says, did he want to stay there? Yes, because but I think it was still a team decision. I think there was still a lot of.
You think the Godfather did it?
I think there was a lot of what
yes.
And I think we look at, I look at it as, okay, you're here to run the Indy 500. Like, this could be a one and done deal. Is it going to be? No, he'll do it again. But, who knows if you'll get another opportunity, right? Is he going to run more Coke 600s? Is he going to run more NASCAR races? Is he going to run
into my
bunch
driver?
Of others? Yeah, he's going to run. He's going to run
driver ran into him.
Plenty more. I just think
that's a more passionate talk.
There was more money spent on the Indy 500 from the last 14 months than I would even argue that Hendrick has put into their Xfinity program in the last year. And I just think that all that money and stuff like that, although that $1.8 million or whatever he gave is probably like $1,000 to us. But, $1,000 to us, though, is still a little important, just like the 1.8 million is important to Hendrick. And I think the money, the time, the effort, I think about this big documentary they had, right? This huge documentary. He's going to run the Indy 500, blah, blah, blah. They were hyping up the Indy 500 more. And they're like, you know what? This rain, we're going to actually shoot off and go to the Coke 600. You want to get some film there, although you've been recording all kinds of Indy 500 stuff? I think there's just a lot of pieces. I think the documentary had part of it. I think Rick Hendrick and the money was a lot of it. How many times are you going to get to run the Indy 500? You're going to run all these NASCAR races. And I think Owen Sawyer said it today when he was like, it was a situation and they attempted to come back. And I personally, NASCAR's put them in a terrible spot with waivers, right? You get a guy suspended last year. If that is, I don't know, if that's Daniel Suarez getting suspended for a race, does he get the same waiver as Chase Elliott? Right?
No.
Think about it.
Chase Elliott has to drive for Rick Hendrick Racing. That's it.
As soon as it happened, it was like, bam, waiver immediately. Most popular driver. If he didn't get a waiver, the season going to shut down. If Daniel Suarez gets suspended and misses the playoffs, guess how much of the ratings are going to go down? Probably maybe 100 views from Mexico. All right? I mean, they ain't losing that much.
It's tough.
So
it's tough.
I'm just thinking it's hard to. It's something where NASCAR put in the position. There needs to be something else. I don't know why we saw this stupid waiver rule. We all know that the racers aren't going to miss races. That's just the way it is. Like the drivers admit it. If you sit out one race, Kevin Harvick, perfect. You miss out a race, it takes you 2 races to get back. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just one of those things where but that's Kyle Larson. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's just what it is.
I haven't said that, Travis, though. I'm sorry, Ryan. I think, though, you bring up Daniel Suarez, you bring up Cody Ware if he was eligible. I think at this point, NASCAR has to grant waivers for those things.
They're granting everything.
They have to.
I don't know what the other 3 or 4 awards that didn't grant. I think one was, I don't remember exactly what they were, but it's just like you gotta find out something. I don't think these people are gonna go miss races to go run other stuff. They're just not. Like, it's their job, and I know, Ryan, you've been saying it's your job. Like, I get it.
Sometimes.
I get it, but it's one of those things where, what is the most popular race in the United States?
Indy 500.
Indy 500.
Mhm.
Do you think Kyle Larson's going to go miss to go run the Winchester 400?
He can now.
No, because he's going to draw fans. He's going to draw fans to it. But like,
will he? No, he can't.
It was just too good for the sport. I know he didn't race. I didn't know, but
how's it too good? That's the part I don't understand. How's it too good for the sport?
Hey,
what sport? We're going to get the 300,000 people that watch IndyCar to watch us? No. That makes no sense.
How many people went to the race, Ryan? How many people?
300,000.
How many people went to the race that wouldn't have went if Kyle Larson wasn't running? Do you think
they sold out just like they did last year?
But let me. How many fans do you think are NASCAR fans out of those 337,000 people that were there? How many of those fans? Give me a percentage, if it's even 1%, that were there for the first time to see an IndyCar race because Kyle Larson was running in the race. That were there, not watching on TV.
I mean, hypothetically, I guess we could say 1%, but if you're looking for a targeted demographic based upon what went last year, what the year before to this year, then it's zero. They sell out every single year, mainly because they don't care about the race. They just want to go get drunk.
It does. It's a motorsports thing.
It's a drunk thing. It's a drunk thing. Your dad went. Your grandpa went. I mean, we got two Kyle Larson fans on the show, and neither one of you guys went.
It's not. I'm an IndyCar fan. Travis isn't. Travis,
you both are Kyle Larson fans, and you both didn't go.
Right. Because I've been to an IndyCar race. I know what I'm going to watch. But, Travis, have you ever been to an IndyCar race?
I've been to 2.
You've been to 2?
3, because I went to the double with NASCAR a couple years ago.
Okay. So I became an IndyCar fan. I'd seen IndyCar on TV. I wasn't an Indianapolis 500 fan. I wasn't an IndyCar fan. I became an IndyCar fan. I think it was in 2004, maybe 2005. I can't remember what year it was. The first year that Kentucky Speedway had IndyCar. Before they got their first ARCA race, before they got their first Busch or Xfinity race, NASCAR race, they had 2 years of IndyCar there. Mm-hmm. And I went the first year because somebody gave me a free ticket, and I had never seen an IndyCar run around.
Ticket.
Yeah, the point was I'd never seen an IndyCar run around the track. I saw it for the first time that day, and I became a fan of the sport. And I'm just wondering how many other people were like me at that race that went there to see Kyle Larson win or run, and now are a fan of that sport. Go ahead. Sorry for cutting out. Damn you, Elon Musk.
Let me give you I'll give you 2 quick stories. So I was at one of my best friends is getting married. So I'm there and I got my Kyle Larson hat on, and I wanted to watch the Xfinity race, and a guy came up to me. He's like, "Oh, you're a Kyle Larson fan?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "I love NASCAR." But he goes, "Do you watch any of the IndyCar race?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Dude, I usually sit there and watch," but he goes, "I've never been so interested and engraved in my phone with Twitter, trying to see how he was going to run the double." And I was actually watching this. He goes, "I followed the NASCAR channel." I was like, "I've never followed anything NASCAR." Because I gave NASCAR a follow. I gave Kyle Larson a follow. And he goes, "I gave Hendrick, I was like, Hendrick? And he's, yeah, Hendrick Motorsports. I followed them." He goes, "I started following." He goes, "I was watching him the helicopter." He goes, "I was tracking the plane online to see how he was going to get there." And I was like, holy crap. I was like, he's like, all of my buddies were. And he goes, "We got so into it." And he's like, "I bought all this Kyle Larson gear now." And he goes, "I know I'm a NASCAR fan because I just like watching it." And he's asking me all these questions. I'm like, holy crap. And I was like, I bet there's probably another 20 or 30,000 people are doing the same thing. I think the second part we look at is I had some people there on the front stretch, right, with, just listening, right? And, we heard the crowds or whatever. And my buddy Lob, my best friend, he goes there and he does I like NASCAR, and he does I like Larson. He actually borrowed one of my Larson shirts. And he was like, "Dude, everyone was cheering or whatever." And he goes, Larson came, and he goes, "The place is erupted." He goes, "Is it always like that in a NASCAR race?" I'm like, a little bit, yeah. But he's like, "This place was because I couldn't hardly hear." He's like, "It just erupted." So it's just cool to hear, and that's what it goes back to, and it sounds bad. And I know, Ryan, I think you're perfectly right. And I think, Joe, you're perfectly right with the waiver thing. But I think NASCAR would have lost. Like, it's different if they were going to run the Winchester 400, but the Indy 500, the biggest race easily in the United States, you got, there's some leeway there. And the waiver system got to go, but what replaces it?
I don't know what replaces it. I guess NASCAR should just have a rule and it just says we decide what and who gets to qualify for the playoffs. Because they might as well. But, NASCAR had a 14% increase. We had, I think it was 2.48 million people watch WWT. How many of you think those were IndyCar fans? Do you think Kyle Larson running on that had any influence on the 14% gain?
1%. Wait, how big of a gain was it this weekend?
It was 14% from the previous year, which is a good amount.
No Chase Elliott. We saw the Chase Elliott effect, right?
That was 6%.
Corey LaJoy ran the 9 car, and that's where Carson Hocevar got the first start.
It was a 10% chance or 10% bump. Whenever you're right, Carson Hocevar did run in Corey LaJoy's car. Corey LaJoy ran in Chase Elliott's car. You're right. Well, this was the suspended race.
That guy texted me. The same guy got my number, texted me Sunday, and was like, dude, like, why did Larson spin out there? Like, what happened? Like, I saw, and he was like all intrigued on it. Like, why did this happen? Like, so if you pin somebody down, does it just take, what to do? So it was just cool to hear some of that stuff. It was from, someone doing the double, right? Promoting IndyCar and NASCAR.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
And this is either one of you answer, and it's just a thought. If you miss a race, hell, if you miss 2 races, and you're still qualify with points, which I think they've taken that away now, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's supposed to be you have to run in every race. That was the whole purpose of
the. But let me ask you this: 30th. Say you only run one race and win it. Why does that not qualify you then? If that's the standard, why does that not qualify? If the standard is to make it into the postseason, and now they have taken the top 25 or top 30 in points, top 25 in points off the table, which I don't think they should have done that anyway. But if that's the standard to win a race and you're in, what's it matter?
Because they don't want people to buy tickets for guys that don't show up. That's the whole purpose of it.
Yes.
Is they don't want Ricky Stenhouse once he wins the Indy 5 or the Daytona 500 to not show up at Talladega because they're like, well, we could save $300,000 not wrecking this week. But the fans know he's not going to show up, then they won't buy a ticket.
Okay, and I get that. And if the car's entered, though, the car's there. And I'm not saying it's a good idea, but if your standard is you win and you're in, you win and you're in, what's it matter if you want to run the rest of the races other than to sell tickets?
Well, that's the whole point. I mean,
and I think
that's what NBA's having a problem with is their athletes don't show up. And
but that's what I was going to say is like, I'm not an NBA guy, but if I was going to go watch somebody like Steph Curry, I like Steph Curry. It's just from the standpoint of shooting stuff like that. If I'm going to go to the Patriots game up here because they're facing Golden State Warriors and I get up there, game time to say, he's out for the night. I just bought a $250 ticket to go watch him and I'm not watching him. I get that. Like, I would be livid. I would be absolutely livid. But does he get a penalty? No, that's in his contract. I think you fix this a certain way, and it stinks because you talk about like having a kid or there's a family death, and I think there's some stuff like that. I think you fix this by bringing back. You got to be like top 28 or 27 in points. It makes it somewhat like you got to be there a lot, right? I was gonna say top 25, but the issue with that is someone's like, well, what happens if I have 2 people die in my family? I miss 2 races, right? You're gonna have that stuff, but I think you look at something like that.
Well, if you get that waiver, then you're not worrying about the points. That's the whole point.
I think you just take the waivers out. Like, quit talking. I think we just got to quit talking about this stupid way. Like, they're handing them out like candy. Like, get rid of the waiver. If you miss a race, it is what it is. But if you miss 2 races, I don't know. Like, it has to be for injury. I think the only way you get whatever is just like injury only. I don't know. I don't know. It's all stupid because then you bring back maybe there should be a waiver. I don't know. It's like you said, if you want to compete, if you sit there and you miss the next 20 races, you're not going to have a shot in the playoffs. Right?
Well,
it's just not.
Or
Austin Cindric may now have a shot in the playoffs anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Or you could get by with all this and say maybe we shouldn't be giving out 16 free spots for 16 free wins. Maybe we should give out 12 spots for wins, and the rest of that goes to the points leaders. Because at the end of the day, you could still theoretically be top 5 in points and miss the playoffs, which I think is asinine. If you finish
third,
if you finish third in points, you shouldn't miss the NASCAR playoffs.
Right.
So maybe we should reserve the top 12 spots for teams with the most wins. If you have 1, 2, or 3 wins, and the next 4 or the next 4 spots go to the points leaders. So if Martin Truex is third in points and doesn't have a win, he should still be in the damn playoffs.
Here's my
question. That goes
question
for anybody.
Here's my question: do we have this conversation if NASCAR immediately after the Coke 600 said Kyle Larson's getting a waiver? Do we even just discuss this? Is this even a discussion?
I think it's discussed. I don't think it harbors the energy of anticipation that we all waited for a week. But that's
it's only a discussion right now because every one of us sitting here thought that it was a preordained deal anyway. None of us even thought about this until the media tried to in NASCAR, I believe, tried to jump it up to start this conversation.
I will say, as soon as he said he wasn't going to go to Charlotte, I said that's bullcrap. And I truly felt that. So I think there's other people that feel that way. And I think there's other people that feel like Rick Hendrick gets what he wants. I mean, he's always been that way. It's always been proven that way. I only got 2 things. When Kyle Busch got his waiver, he also had to finish top 20 in points, which he did. He had to win 6 races. I think he won 4 in a row and then got like 3rd on his 5th. So what he had to do to even get into the playoffs is monumental. I mean, he literally had to beat all the other drivers while missing 10. So that's my one thing nice to say about Kyle, because everything is really sad right now. But yeah, and I just totally lost train of thought on my last one.
No, so, I think you got a good point because he had to be top 13 points in order to get into it. But at the same time, like I think NASCAR, like that situation, in my opinion, put NASCAR in an awful spot by saying like, "Hey, we're gonna give you the waiver," and then he won the championship, and it's like they're in the back of their head, they're like.
He won the championship because he had to do something incredible. Right. It's not that he didn't do something amazing. That he won more races than most people win in their careers that year.
And Kyle Busch deserved that waiver.
Yeah, and that's what I mean though. Like what he did the last 23 races of the year was incredible. Like if you look at his stats, those last 23 races were incredible. But it's like I think NASCAR looks at that and go like, oh man, like we kind of put ourselves in a little bit of a pickle, right? Because it's like guy missed 13 races and won a championship.
Yeah, that's what NASCAR does. So, we're all here. We all get to have our opinions. At the end of the day, you guys get the good side of it, and I think you got the side that, like you said, Joe, we all expected this. This isn't something that was unexpected. We all expected this. It's whether or not the conversation, who deserves it, who doesn't deserve it. What does NASCAR do moving forward if somebody just literally doesn't show up to drive? And then NASCAR has that precedent now, Joe, that I don't know what they do. I don't know what the defense is now that you don't get a waiver. I mean, at this point, it's like, if Kaz Grala wins next week, does he show up for the rest of his season? Like, I don't know. So we got all kinds of other news coming up. I know Chase Briscoe possibly linked to JGR. That's something. So, yeah, and we got some fun shorts, things of that nature. Joe will be streaming iRacing. We got all kinds of stuff. Also, and thank you guys. We did hit 1,000 subscribers. You guys have been killing it here recently, so appreciate that. But we will catch you in the next one. For Travis, Joe, my name's Ryan. See you. God bless.